Welcome to the Architect My Business podcast. I'm Aya Schlachter, your host, founder, and CEO of MGS Global Group. We provide architectural drafting and rendering services for busy firm owners and designers. Recently, we added new services such as bookkeeping and digital marketing. I put aside my dream of being an architect and pivoted to serve architects. Since then, I've never looked back. MGS Global started as a part-time gig when I was a new mom drafting for architects in New York City. Now we serve small to large firms and publicly traded companies in retail and hospitality. The best part, I get to help architects maintain a better work-life balance so they can do more of what matters most. From starting out solo to now leading a team of over 45 and growing, I've learned a thing or two about making a business thrive. Whether you're thinking of starting, already managing, or want to take your business to the next level, this podcast is for you. Each episode is packed with simple, actionable tips on leadership, people, marketing processes, and of course, profit. I keep things real. Like you, I've got no time for fluff. This podcast is brought to you by MGS Global Group. Now, let's get into this episode. Our guest today is Ryan Sullivan. Ryan is the founder and lead financial planner of Off the Beaten Path Financial. Starting his career as a mechanical engineer, he built an engineering department from ground up before starting his financial planning firm. His focus is on helping architects and engineers build, grow, and use their wealth to accomplish their biggest dreams. He believes cash flow is the foundation of a strong financial position and helps his clients make sure their money is aligned with their values by building systems that provide peace of mind, financial clarity, and ultimately better decision making. Welcome to the show, Ryan. How are you doing?
Thanks, Aya. Glad to be here. I'm doing well. How are you?
Great. I'm really excited that you're on the show because this is one of the things that architects and firm owners are lacking in, like financial literacy, right? And so there are a lot of questions that I prepared for you to answer and advice for architects. But before we get started, I was reading your bio and you said that you were working on a ski resort, or no? You're doing building trails and a ski area. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so you might kind of tell by the background. My wife and I, we bought a property at home a few months ago where we live in Montana, and it's at the base of the mountains, and it's pretty far back kind of into the woods and at the base of a hill. So the plans this summer is to kind of work on building some trails around the property, and then we back up to national forest. And so there's a spot where we can ski in the wintertime there. So that's kind of the goal, is to build our own little kind of private ski area for ourselves. So it's been fun.
Out of curiosity, how big is your ski area?
I mean, big enough, enough to make some runs on there.
That's great. No, I'm fascinated by that. Like, people go to ski areas, but you're building one in your backyard. So hopefully you can share photos.
Oh, yeah, I got some good photos. But you got to hike a little bit, but you put in the work and it works out.
Yeah. So I know you were a mechanical engineer way back. Are you still are you still a practicing mechanical engineer?
Yep. So I still hold my license. I still do some engineering. But yeah.
I'm fascinated by your story when you said at 26, you launched an engineering department at a family-owned plumbing and contracting company. And then within 5 years, you grew the department to over 1 million. Like, did you have business training already, or it was just through the engineering background? Can you talk about that process?
Yeah. So I kind of early on in my engineering career realized that, I wanted to do more than just kind of the day-to-day engineering work. And so I spent a lot of my free time just reading and learning and researching, about business, personal development, investing, markets, just all of these different areas. And so I feel like I kind of taught myself a lot of these things as far as from the resources out there and a lot of the great books. And I love to read. And so that prepared me to a certain extent, as much as it could really, to enter into that situation. And so when I started that engineering department, I'd been working previously at a traditional architecture engineering firm. So I spent a lot of time around architects and kind of understood, what that was like. But I really wanted to get more into the business side of things. And so I had looked at buying a business. I'd looked at starting a business. I had looked at business consulting, and none of those really kind of checked out in the moment. But when this opportunity came up to basically start a department, it was kind of a unique thing where I got basically full ownership and control over it, with not a lot of oversight. But so I got the experience of kind of starting my own business and developing a firm and building a team and all of that, but without, having to worry about a paycheck or having to worry about payroll or these different things. And so that was great experience, and, learned a ton through that as far as, managing people and kind of building a business and everything that goes into all of it.
So part of the job was also finance. Were you involved in all the financial decisions as well, and business development
Yeah, to
and
a certain
reading all the
extent.
financial statements? Yeah.
So I, managed all the projects and dealing with, project profitability, and looked at, the profitability of the department. And so, did look at the financial statements from that standpoint, not necessarily for the whole business, but just for kind of the area that I oversaw.
I'm a big proponent, or like I really enjoy learning through analogy, right? So how has your mechanical engineering skills translate into all of the financial planning business that like do you have any tools or things you learned from mechanical engineering specifically to engineering and translate that to finance?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, there's a couple of things that I feel like were really valuable lessons I learned in my engineering career. And, one of them was the ability to zoom in and out. And so, like, problem solving, engineers and architects, I mean, we solve problems, right? And so when you look at a problem, there's kind of the macro level and then there's the micro level. And if you get stuck in kind of one viewpoint, it's really easy to miss things. And so from if you're stuck in the micro, you kind of miss the bigger picture, and maybe you're not even solving the right problem. If you get stuck in the macro, you miss some details, and maybe everything doesn't work out as well as it could have. And so the ability to kind of bounce back and forth between those two perspectives is also really valuable when it comes to finance. And so, obviously money is a sensitive topic and important in a lot of different ways. And so you really don't want to make mistakes. So there's a level of detail orientation that you have to be able to not miss things and analyze the numbers and figures and run these analyses and do all of that. But at the same standpoint, if you're not, looking at kind of what are your goals, and a lot of when I work with clients is really approaching it from a goal standpoint of, what are your values? What's important to you? Where are you trying to go with this? And understanding that really creates a framework for how we're going to approach any decisions that we would make when it comes to financial matters. So I think there's a good parallel there.
Yeah, I like that zoom in and zoom out. A lot of us architects tend to just are in the business and zooming in whenever we have problems to solve them, but we don't have a strategy. I mean, I was guilty of that too. I'm a like 15-year business owner. Again, learning by mistakes. So now we're doing much better. My other question for you is, why are you or was there a moment in time or in your career or while growing up that you really decided that having financial freedom is key to, like, in falling in love with your future? Was there a moment like when did you realize I need to take care of finance? Because not many people, we just go by with life, just winging it. But what was that defining moment for you?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if I can speak to like a specific thing, but I feel like early on in my life, and maybe when I was a kid, and part of it was maybe kind of like a scarcity mindset around, money. And I just wanted to have like control and freedom ultimately, and flexibility. And so I think from an early age, I just kind of recognized that money gives you options. And so I wanted to have options, and it not like I don't really like spending money necessarily. I'm fairly conservative when it comes to that. But I wanted the ability to spend money in ways that were important to me.
I like that money gives you options, which is absolutely true. So did you have any mentors growing up in terms of guiding you to be very mindful about spending?
Honestly, I'd say a lot of my kind of financial philosophy and everything was really self-taught. like I mentioned earlier, I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and so I just spent a lot of time developing kind of my own thought process and methodology there. And so again, I think, kind of my spending habits stemmed from just seeing kind of the challenges that can come from not having enough money. And so in my family growing up, there's a lot of conversations around, hey, can we afford this or not? Should we do this or that? And I just didn't want to be in that position. And so that kind of influenced me to prioritize, the future more over the present. And I think that mentality has served me well and allowed me to do things that I probably otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. And so one of those, buying this property. And so for me, like, money is really just that optionality. And I think when people understand that and they can align, what's really important to them and then use that to make decisions around it, I think that helps put them in a better position and they use their money in a better way than just kind of carelessly spending, which is what a lot of people will find themselves.
So, I don't know if you work with only architects who are employees or firm owners, but I have a story I wanted to share, which is the reason why I became an entrepreneur. When I was younger, I was just out of college or grad school. I worked in this architecture firm. My job was the safest because I was paid the least. I'm at the bottom of the, barrel. So I had two project managers, middle-aged men, amazing guys. Every day they came to work looking really worried and sad because economy was bad and they belonged to the sandwich generation. So they were taking care of their aging parents and taking care of their kids. And I love those mentors because they taught me so much, but it really pained me to see them come to work very fearful that they could get laid off and not have enough. Right. So I just wanted to share that because I will ask questions about, have you had examples of people at that point in their career, they're in their 50s, taking care of their kids and their parents, but they don't have a nest egg, right? Is that, do you have clients that you have helped in that position? Like sometimes it's too late. Like at 55, I was listening to your podcast, The Broke Architect, right? You were able to help somebody reach $1 million or plan for $1 million in 20 years. What happens when you don't have 20 years when you're like 58?
Yeah.
So I know that's a lot to unpack, but yeah.
No, I love this story, and it's true. I mean, that has influenced me. I've had similar examples of people like that I've seen over the years, and it's a very difficult situation. And so I've had a couple of people that I've talked with, that are kind of in that boat, and it's not fun. It's not fun for me. It's not fun for them. And most people are unaware of really what it takes to really retire, and maybe healthcare costs that are going to come on. And so it's a very challenging situation. And so I think really all that you can do is kind of have that reality check and then really put some numbers to it and understand what it's going to take, because you really don't want to end up in a situation where you run out of money. It's not great. And so, hopefully you have a support system or, family that can kind of help you at that point in time. But if you end up, relying on the government, that's not the best place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're later on we'll unpack some of the your company's services. But before that, why did you make a transition from engineering to finance?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, early on in my engineering career, actually I sat next to the head mechanical engineer for the whole office, and then his boss, who was the head mechanical engineer for the whole company. And I quickly got the vision of what my future would be. And similarly to kind of your story there, this guy, was complaining about having to send his kids to college and not having time to go to the gym. And, I didn't really like the lifestyle that I was seeing, and it was like, okay, this is my career path, so 10 years, I maybe manage this office, and then 20 years, I maybe manage the firm, and that's it. And so I started looking for other areas, and that was when I discovered investing and as well as entrepreneurship and business. And so my mom in college, she was like, "Hey, you should take some business classes." And I was like, "Business classes? Like, I'm an engineer. Like, I don't need to do that. That's for the dumb kids. Like, I'm smart. I'm an engineer." And so very soon after college, I realized like, hey, actually, entrepreneurship, business, like that's where it's at. That's where you can actually create freedom. You can create control. You can control your income, your time. And so then it became just this kind of long journey of how can I do that? And so through a lot of trial and error and a lot of talking to different people and trying different things, but I kind of always kept coming back to finance and investing and money. And I was spending a lot of my free time, doing that. And so as I was having conversations with friends and colleagues and family, realized like, hey, not everybody spends all of their free time figuring these things out. They don't build these crazy spreadsheets, that do everything for them. And they don't understand, the intricacies of investing and markets. And so that kind of pushed me to be like, hey, I've developed an expertise here. I should share that. And so it kind of was this gradual progression. And along the way there, I had an interesting interaction with a guy at a store kind of randomly who was a financial advisor and used to be an engineer. And so we kind of hit it off and started kind of meeting up for lunch, every month or two. And I learned more about kind of the business and what it looked like and his kind of lifestyle and all of that. And so eventually kind of all these different pieces came together and it was like, I think this makes a lot of sense. I want to do this. And so I launched my firm.
So why did you focus on the AEC industry and not everyone?
Yeah. I mean, as you probably know too, it's really helpful in business to have kind of a niche and a specific, target market. And there's a lot of advantages to doing that. And so with my background as an engineer, I have spent a lot of time around architects in a variety of ways. And so I figured, hey, why not work with the people that I already have relationships with? I understand how they think, how they work. I understand their business. And so it was kind of an easy decision to make of, why not work with these people that I already am kind of a part of that community. And so that quickly became kind of my target market. And, from there, there's really, I think some of the biggest benefits are just the understanding, how people think, right? And so architects are very unique in how they go about their business and what their influences are and kind of their values and where they want to go, how their business works. And so being able to understand their world and communicate effectively with them, I think is valuable on both sides of the table.
Yeah. So let me step back a little and zoom out. Like, how do you think architecture and engineering firm owners translate firm performance to the financial success of both themselves and their employees?
Yeah. So, as a business owner, your business is probably your biggest asset. And so you spend a ton of time, a ton of money, a ton of energy and resources in building that. And I think a lot of times, especially for architects, it's really easy to get wrapped up in, the art and the craft of it. And it's easy to kind of put on the back burner the financial side or maybe the structure and the kind of organization that really creates a strong business. And especially for architects, there's a huge percentage of businesses out there are solo operations or very small firms, just a couple people. And so the owner, the founder of that firm is kind of it, right? And so it's easy to think that there's not as much like kind of enterprise value in the business, or they don't know how to build it into something. But there's, ways you can go about it with just a couple tweaks here and there where you can build something that is going to be worth something down the road. And so one, I think it's creating that longer term enterprise value, a business that can potentially move beyond you whenever you decide it's time. That's a huge thing. And then, as a business owner, obviously taxes are a big thing that come into play. And so there's a lot of opportunities that you can use to kind of leverage the business in different ways to benefit you personally. And kind of along that note, access to retirement plans and other things. You just have a lot of opportunities there that you can take the success of the business and turn it into personal wealth and personal success too. And so I think it's easy to spend all of your energy focused on your business and neglect taking a similar approach to your personal finances, which would benefit, equally, if not even more so, by doing similar things.
Right. I like that about tax planning and how really to work with more strategy around personal and business and how, I mean, they're really related. If you're a small firm owner, you can't pay yourself if your business is not profitable. How can you even provide some savings for your Roth IRA and your 401k, right? It's all
Yeah.
interconnected. But what are your top 3 tips for business owners in terms of getting started, especially when they're in the thick of things and they're not willing to learn, or it's not that they're not willing, they just don't have the bandwidth. So how would you approach that, your top 3 tips for these firm owners?
Yeah, I think, in the architecture business, whether you charge hourly or not, I mean, even if you do, fixed contracts and stuff, at the end of the day, you're basically selling your time. I mean, you can make your time more valuable, but you're selling services. Services require time. And so everything that you do ultimately is related back to time. And so I think it's really important to understand where your time's going, what your time is worth, and try to optimize that. And so a lot of times you just get stuck in kind of the day to day and putting out fires and just, chasing things. But if you can really try to leverage your time on the business side, then that's going to open the door to a lot better understanding of how your business is working, what's going to make it more successful, and where you should focus. So that's kind of one tip. Another tip too is I'm a big proponent of systems. And when it comes to finances, talking about cash flow. And so cash flow for a business owner is huge. And that causes a lot of stress, if you don't have cash when you need it. And so I also like to automate things kind of as much as possible and have systems that take away kind of the energy and the headache of managing that as much as possible. And so that looks like a lot of kind of forethought and planning, doing, projections and understanding, what is your workload or your backlog looking like? When are you expecting to actually get paid? And, there's a pretty big time delay between when you do the work, when you bill for the work, and then when you actually get the money for the work. And so
That's around
understanding that
90 days
dynamic.
on average.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
there are strategies you can do to try to condense that time as well, which helps things. But do you have a plan for that? Right. And so it all comes down to how does the money flow into your business, out of your business, and taking it into your personal finances too. Do you have a steady income from your business, or is your salary or your take home pay highly variable? And so that can create challenges too. And so really like wrapping all of this together into a coherent strategy that makes sense for you and your firm, so that it can kind of stabilize it. Because I think a lot of business owners end up in this super up and down, kind of back and forth, highly volatile environment because projects come and go, work come and go, people pay, they don't pay, all of these things. And so how can you create consistency despite that variability? So that's the second tip. And then the third one there I can think of is, diversifying your income. And I think this is something you've been kind of pushing on architects for, is understanding that kind of the business is changing and evolving. And how can you kind of future proof your firm, and understanding that there's other opportunities out there that you can leverage kind of your skills and expertise and create different revenue streams. And so whether those are different industries or, productizing, looking at, kind of the developer side or the manufacturing side, I feel like it's a pretty big trend where a lot of firms these days are getting into different areas, like kind of adjacent sandboxes outside of just, architectural design services, but it opens the door to so many possibilities when you do that. And it creates kind of diversification and a level of kind of safety or redundancy in your business, especially to work through the ups and downs of kind of the economic cycle.
Yeah, I love that. But let's go to this your second tip first. Let me just talk about that. I'm a systems person as well, and I'm a hawk when it comes to finance because I have over 50 employees now. So I need to make sure I can pay them every 2 weeks, right? So
Yeah.
for small firm owners, right, they might not think that they need a system because they're too small. I mean, do you have any type of, software that you use or something that can help them, like for a small firm owner, like help them just manage their finances better, or, any tools you can recommend?
Yeah. So the challenge I think with that is like businesses are so kind of specific, and when you create one, you have kind of your own unique methods of how you do it. And so I'm a huge fan of Excel. I love Excel. I know a lot of architects, it's maybe not their expertise or their favorite thing. But that's something I do for my clients as well, is like help them create a system and a spreadsheet ultimately, that's going to make sense to them and that's easy to use, that lines up with how they do business. And so that's a simple tool. Beyond that, Monograph is a great product out there that I think a lot of people really enjoy and provides, helps make it simple, and it's specific to the architecture business. So that's one too, if you're a little more sophisticated or you're not an Excel person.
For my personal finances, I use Quick and Simplify because I'm also like, are you familiar with that? Quick and Simplify. It also puts all of your money in a bucket. Like I have a budget for groceries. So it's great because, I'm a business owner, right? So I pay myself a salary. I'm just offering this to to my listeners to Quick and Simplify. You can set an amount, like let's say 1,000 for groceries, 300 for, just recreation and and then it's linked to your bank account. And when you go over, you see that there's a red line that, hey, it becomes red when you go over it. So it's kind of like a game, right? I'm like, yay, I didn't spend that much on groceries, but my eating out is like off the charts. So it's good to track. It's, simple tools like that because we're visual people. So, I just started that this year. I think it's great. One of the things I really enjoyed about listening to you on the Broke Architect podcast was that your knowledge about productizing service offerings. A lot of architects, that seems very alien to them, right? Productized service offerings, because everything we do are very customized and individual and time for money kind of thing. So do you have examples of, how architects can productize their service offerings?
Yeah. It's, comes down to thinking about what are things that you do consistently, right? And so what are processes that you continuously have to do? What are there similarities between the designs and the work that you're doing? How can you, because I think the challenge with the building industry is that, which still blows my mind, but every single building that we build is like a one-off, right? It's like they're all entirely custom, and it's just not very efficient. And so, are there ways that you can still do that, but have some level of consistency and kind of start to do, like Lego pieces or blocks? And so if you can think about like that concept at a building level, but within your process and your business itself, where are these areas that you spend a lot of time? And so, for me, like I build spreadsheets, and so we've developed spreadsheets for specific processes that we could turn into a software, or we could turn around and sell. Are there similar types of buildings or structures you're working on where you could look at commoditizing those and kind of selling those? And so it's really understanding in your business, I think, where you spend a lot of time is probably a spot where you could potentially try to turn that into something that someone else would benefit from, right? And so if you've developed a tool that saves you time and energy, somebody else potentially would be willing to pay for that and could use that too.
Yeah, kind of like intellectual property, and then they package that and sell it as, part of their system. So I'm looking at your website. It's called Off the Beaten Path Financial. I love it. I like the way it sounds, and your tagline is, do you know how to design buildings? Do you have a blueprint for financial success? I like this a lot, but when I look at your firm owner services, it's amazing because it's not only finance, but you also do business strategy and business structure. So, I mean, I like that you come with it. I mean, your services are really holistic, right? Because sometimes if you just focus on the finance, it might be too late. They need a bigger strategy around their financial positions and strategy. So can you talk about some of the business strategy, business structure you do for your architecture clients?
Yeah. Well, so, tapping into kind of my engineering background and spending a lot of time around architects and being in the space, it made sense to me because, as you pointed out earlier, you know, for a lot of business owners, their business is kind of everything, and so their personal finances, their personal life is highly interconnected with their firm. And so if you don't really start kind of from the highest level and make sure that the business is really doing what it should be doing, then you're kind of always trying to play catch up. And so I'm very much a strategy guy. I'm a planner, and so I really like to kind of start from the fundamentals of like, what are you doing? Why did you start this firm? Like, what is the objective? Is the goal of this to build this large organization because you want to solve some specific problem? Do you want to empower people and your employees? Is it to create financial success for yourself personally? And so there's a lot around like, why are you doing these things? And that can really then kind of influence into how the business is structured, what kind of the overriding objectives are, and making sure that everything kind of lines up. And so for me, I really like to think about everything kind of needs to align across the board between your personal life, your personal finances, your business, how it's all operating to create that consistency throughout. And when you do that, like you open the door to a lot more optimization because you're pointed in the right direction and you're not kind of running in different areas. And I think a lot of times where people struggle is they spend a lot of time on the wrong things. And so the reason why they're so busy, the reason why they can't get caught up is their their energy is in the wrong place. And so that's kind of a lot of
Right.
what I help people do is align that.
So you take care of the business strategy and cash flow and strategic investments, but then you also bridge the gap between business to personal, right? With retirement plans and financial wellness. That's great. But also you know how to do tax planning. Like I love this. It's like you're like a one-stop shop. Do you work with brokers? Do you work with accountants? Because tax planning is like a whole different ball game, right? Like, especially when you're running an international business or whatever. It's just so complicated. So how do you do all of this? Is there a minimum time? Let's say I want to work with you, right? And my books are a mess and my company's a mess. I mean, I probably need to engage with you for like at least 2 years. How does that work in terms of when you see somebody who's really desperate and everything is in chaos? Like, is there a minimum engagement so that you can see your client's success?
Yeah, great question. I mean, so the way that I kind of look at it and position myself is, I want to be sort of the quarterback of your finances, right? Like anything related to money. I'm not an expert in every single thing. I'm not an accountant. I'm not an expert on international business or tax law, but I have resources and a network and people. And most business owners, usually have a CPA they're already working with or a lawyer, these different things. And so it's really about bringing things to the people's attention. And so I have a good kind of general awareness a lot of these areas where I can help point people in the right direction and then bring in maybe a specific expert to help facilitate, the finer details of that. And so I think that for a lot of business owners, they're very busy. They don't have a ton of time and they just need someone to kind of point out these areas where they're maybe weaker or where there's opportunities. and then help direct them to the right place or the right person. And so that's what a lot of that looks like, is taking, starting the conversation, opening the door to these different areas, and then either doing it myself or finding the right person to help facilitate whatever their specific needs are.
No, that's great. I'm a big proponent of consultants. Like my company grew so much because of the consultants that I hired. And I always say, you need to spend money to make money. And for me, consultants are an investment, not an expense. Right. So I love, what you're doing. I mean, I'm looking at your process, pre-design meeting, schematic design meeting, proposal review. And I like that you're very transparent about your pricing as well. It's good to be upfront about your pricing. And I think that for people who are really struggling financially, like I said, you need to spend money to make money. And if you want to succeed, it's not how, but who in your network can help you. So I'm glad that we got this conversation going. And, thanks for what you do for the industry. What's next for Ryan, and how can people find you? Is there any, do you have any webinars or upcoming events that you want to promote?
Yeah. So, my website is a great place to start. So, obpfinancial.com. And then I'm very active on LinkedIn. And so I post there quite a bit. So definitely check me out there. It's Ryan Sullivan, PE. And then I also have an email newsletter. And so I send out a weekly newsletter with one story, one tip, and then one term related to financial planning. And so those are probably the best places to check me out. I don't have a webinar coming up quite yet, but that is something I'm working on. So in the near future here.
Yeah, so keep me posted. I'll blast it to the people that, entrepreneurs. We all need financial advice. All of us.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Ryan. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Aya. It was great. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Architect My Business podcast. If you want more, head over to architectmybusiness.com for more episodes, show notes, and links to everything mentioned in this episode. Don't forget to catch our mini shows, Her Space, Ask Aya, and our main show, Architect My Business. If you enjoyed our episodes and want to hear more, please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Your feedback really helps us grow. Stay tuned for the next episode. Bye!